Welcome to this discussion of women in ministry. When we speak about women in ministry, we're talking about women pastors who are ordained in the Apostolic Faith Mission of South Africa. We've been ordaining women as the church since 1993. Although we have not reached the target that I would have liked to reach, but I'm pleased that up to date, we have 283 ordained women in the AFM. We, in the past, engaged some of them so that we can understand how are they experiencing ministry in the AFM. There are quite a number of them who are presiding pastors in congregations, quite few that are in regional structures. But be that as it may, there are a number of challenges that they pick up. As you are going to hear from them today, this discussion should be a discussion that is taken further so that we are able all together to create an environment within the AFM that would allow women to minister in the same way that men who are ordained are ministering, that they will also be able to serve. So I would like to invite you today to listen to these two women, Jackie and Tandanani. They are some of the ordained AFM women pastors. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My story starts in 1983 with my matric year, where I really had an amazing time with the Lord, and God called me for full-time ministry. At that stage, I went to my pastor, and my pastor said, if a woman wants to work for the Lord, she can either become a social worker or she can go to M2819. So I decided I'd rather go to M2819 and work for the Lord. What's so wonderful is that all the men that played a role in my life encouraged me to fulfill my God-given calling. My first 2 years in M2819, I served and I was taught, and in my second year I was a group leader, and we traveled right through the country, and wherever we went I ministered, and I never felt that I was not honored as a woman to fulfill my calling. After M2819 I became a youth worker in Port Said, and my mentor was Pastor Bennett Brazier, and since day one he acknowledged the gifting in me, and when we had meetings I always felt that I'm part of the team and everybody sees my gifting. And at that stage my role was youth worker, but I also visited all the new people that came to the church. After I got married, I was a youth worker in Kensington and PE, and Pastor Harry Ellis, he was my mentor, and I could just fulfill my ministry as a woman of God, being in the church and living out what God puts in my heart. When my husband and myself started our own ministry in Welkom, my husband said he feels that I must go and study and be acknowledged as an AFM pastor, and he was my biggest encourager. He really developed me as a woman, gave me the space in the church, and the last 2 years God challenged us with new vision and transformation in our church, and we came to a decision time where we realized that we had to change roles. Pastor Johan Stein, the chairperson of our region, was very encouraging. He helped us through the whole process. He also acknowledged the calling of me as a woman pastor, and our positions were changed, and I became the visionary pastor. Our church just took it. Our church board are fully with me, our team are fully with me. I can just testify of what God is doing through me, in us, and us as church together, transforming our community and transforming everybody that we meet daily. I also just want to embrace another man, and that's Pastor Jay Besano. And he always challenged me as women to fulfill my God-given calling, but to stay biblical. So I am honored to share the road, and I'm excited about what can come out of this if women do what God called them to do.
Greetings all. My upbringing is similar to that of Moses, where I had all of that I needed when I grew up, and the opportunities to go to the right schools were at my doorstep. But just like Moses, I had a turning point when I realized the injustices in the world, and the veil was removed from my eyes, and I realized everyone needed Jesus. I was born again in grade 6, and I was 12 years old at school. We had scripture union, and I was fortunate enough to receive the good news at a tender age. At that time, I was part of the Sunday school. I then became part of the youth ministry, where I was able to really be free to introduce a number of radical ideas about career guidance and arts as a form of expression for the young people, and that drew a number of young people in the church. I became a youth leader, as in a chairperson of the youth as well after that time. When I was in first year at Wits, I received my calling into ministry, and it changed everything. I wanted to stop school, and I had a burning desire to save the lost. Fortunately, my mentor at the time, Reverend Chikane, asked me a question, and he said, if you stop school now, who will you lead? Because you will be called in a generation that will be different from the times that we have lived in. And that was the best advice I had received. I finished school, went into practice. Then after that, I enrolled into Bible school. When I finished my studies and my MIL, I became ordained. And at the time, I was serving as assistant pastor in the church. The church got into a time in 2017 to 18 where we were looking for a pastor to lead a church. And that's how I became the presiding pastor.
I love our country. I love our communities. I love the people of South Africa. And for me, it's a huge challenge that we need more workers in the harvest field. We need more people, especially women, that will stand up. If we look at Galatians 3, Paul said, there's no free person, there's no slave, there's no Gentile, there's no Jew, there's no woman, no man. So it's time that we realize we need a team to be the hope in South Africa. Reinhard Bonnke said, if people are drowning, they don't care who throws the lifeline. It's about the lifeline that can save them. So the challenge today is, will we rise and will we give each other a place to throw out the lifelines and be the hope that South Africa needs?
As women, there is a single mold that every woman is required to fit into for them to be considered godly or holy. That mold is the mold found in Proverbs 31, which is, I feel, an idealistic picture. And I feel that there are a number of things in the chapter itself that are more empowering to a woman than really suppressing how she's measured in her service to the Lord. For instance, I was ministering a number of times. I found that my appearance seemed to not fit into what certain people expected a woman to look like, or a lady to look like, or a pastor to look like. And I remember one time at an event I spoke, and when I sat down, an elderly man came to me and said, "You can't be ministering to us with hair that looks like that." So for me, it was really saying to me that the entire time this man was being ministered to and was listening to me, all he could see was my hair. And that really took away any credibility, any preparation, any prayer work that had happened in the background, and surmounted it to my appearance. A lot of men are able to express themselves in different ways, look differently, but women are boxed into certain mannerisms that really limit what God is trying to do in their lives.
I grew up in a church that the idea was women must be seen and not be heard. The idea is that women must bear children and so fulfill God's calling. The question is just, is that scriptural? Because if I read Paul's letters, I see that he says there's a woman, and I know there's a lot of debate about it, but there's a woman that they think she's an apostle, and that's Junia. In Romans 16, he says, please, church, work with Phoebe, work with this person to prosper the gospel. So the question is just, what does Scripture say? And will we open our hearts to fulfill our callings and our calling as church in our communities?
I was in a boardroom with certain members of a forum. And in that place where I usually am sitting amongst men and I'm the only woman, one of the members turned to me and said, won't you make us some tea? And my pastor stood up in a rage and said, well, how will she participate in this meeting if she's making tea in the kitchen? And at that moment, it created a teaching environment where the other members realized that I was part of the meeting because I was there to add value. So in Luke chapter 10, we learn that Martha invites Jesus into her home, and then almost automatically, she does what she had always been taught to do as a little girl. She goes to the kitchen and she prepares for Jesus. But the most incredible thing happens at that moment is that Jesus did not expect Martha to go to the kitchen and prepare food for him. Instead, he teaches that a woman is also able to sit at his feet, be discipled by him, and be taught. And he teaches that there are times being discipled and learning the word of God is more important than the kitchen.
It's our year of election. And the fact on the table is that women don't even vote for women in structures. The question is, do we realize that Matthew 10 says that if we receive the prophet in the name of the prophet, if we receive the messenger of God in the name of acknowledging the messenger as sent by God, so if we acknowledge the giftings, the potential that God put in women and in people in the church, do we realize that we can all benefit and that we as church and local churches can become much stronger because we will receive the gifting. The challenge, however, is, are we willing to embrace change? Are we willing to pay the price? And are we willing to open ourselves for change?
People think that by putting women in certain places, without them being empowered, without them being capacitated, is fixing the wrong. So I found many instances where I would be called and they would say, you should stand for this position or please be part of our team because we need a woman in our team. Not because we know that you have the capacity to give value, not because we've seen you, not because we want to hear what you've got to say. No, simply because you're a woman and we need a woman in the team so that we balance the equation. I feel that sets women up for failure because people will say, oh, we did what the rules say, we did what the law says and what society said, and we put the woman in the role and she couldn't do the work, she failed. So people forget that you can't just put a woman in a role without her being capable of doing her functions, but also it's society's role to empower her and enable her to be prepared for whatever responsibility that she needs to do. So I really have a problem with being put in a place or being nominated into positions just because I'm a woman.
Wow, what a sharing. We really would like to express our appreciation and thanks to Pastor Tandanani and Pastor Jackie. As we were listening, I think you would agree with me. It is always a learning curve for us when we listen to experiences that have never come our way. The women pastors of the AFM have spoken. What are we going to do now about it? I would like to suggest the following. All of us in the AFM must accept the fact that God calls us into ministry irrespective of gender. And therefore, all of our congregations should make sure that they open opportunities when it comes to succession. Our ordained women pastors can also be called as presiding pastors. I would also like to see our structures at regional level that will also open up, because once women come in, our understanding of the reality will be broadened, because they always bring another perspective, as we have had today. And I'm almost sure that if women assume leadership positions in our regional structures, that would open up a possibility of us having also women as some of our national office bearers. It is therefore important that our governing bodies will begin to do introspection in order to remove any bias, anything that sounds like patriarchal barrier preventing women from fulfilling their calling. I hope you will accept my recommendations in this regard. I thank you.